Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the podcast. Welcome to Coffee and Critique. We're going to have a special guest today. We have Nicoline. She is an author. She'll be in the room in just a sec. Hello, hello.
Hey, I made it.
You made it. How's it going?
Good. I wasn't sure how this whole ID thing worked. I was a little nervous. I'm like, I've never done this. This is cool.
Yeah, it's a fun process. Pretty much Instagram Live is still working on, its kinks and whatnot, but
Right.
because right now it's at like an hour limit, and then sometimes it'll just cut off, and then the footage would just be gone. So
No.
So I have a backup, so I always have everything recording. So I'll be sharing that soon. But so how you been lately? Like, what's been going on in this quarantine?
It's been good. I've just been I finally got into a writing group again. I was having some trouble for a minute. I had so many to-do projects, so many things I wanted to do that I was kind of jumping things. I couldn't focus on one thing, and I think it had a lot to do with the fact that I had the news on in the morning and in the afternoon and at night, watching this like dystopia kind of unravel around us.
Yeah.
Like real life fantasy right now. So I finally I decided I was going to start writing the Champion book. So all the girls you photographed back in last July.
Yeah.
they're each going to get a trilogy now. So I just started writing Eshi's book. It's
sweet.
Going really well. Yeah, I'm excited about it. It's turning out well, and I was having trouble getting into a groove, but this one I'm like
in the
really
groove
moving
now.
along with it. Yeah. So that feels very relieving because for a minute there I was getting a little nervous. I was like, I've lost my mojo.
Right? Now, in the terms of that, like how did that majorly affect you? Because I know not only you're an author, but you also travel, and I know maybe somewhat the traveling inspires the creativity. So how does that affect your work?
Yeah, that's been really tough. And then when they closed the parks down, that added a whole nother level. So for me, I was kind of finding peace and solace within like the local parks. I would take my dog there and whatever. But yeah, I keep going on the internet and looking up different places I want to go as soon as this is over. I'm like, oh, where am I going next? I was like, I want to go to Costa Rica. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, it has been tough. And I am one of those people that I also kind of, when I write, it works as a form of therapy a little bit. So like for me, I get a lot of what I'm thinking out through my writing. Anyone who's read my books will find a lot of social commentary within the fantasy stories. When I'm not writing, I tend to get a little cuckoo. So it's nice now that I have a groove going again.
Okay, that's awesome. Now, in terms of the book that you just like you working on, is it finished or with the Asha?
No. So Marisa Jimenez did the trading cards. So anyone who's been to my shows and has seen like little Champion trading cards that I made.
Yeah.
So now she's actually making versions of those of the girls at ages like 9, 10. And then book 2 will be the girls at age like 15. And then the third book will be the versions that she's already drawn at young 20s. And I'm on book 1 right now. Book 1 of 14. No, sorry. 21. All 7 girls get 3 books. So.
Wow.
Yeah, what am I doing? What have I gotten myself into?
That is a life's work. I mean, as long as it brings joy, because people will look back and be like, "Wow, she really wrote that many books." Like, I don't know.
I'm kind of hoping. So the American Girl collection.
Yeah.
So like when we were much younger, the books were really big, and I think now I guess they still are, but this is in a way it's similar, sort of, in the sense that like. It's these young girls and you're watching them overcome what's going on in their parts of the world. So this one's a little bit more global. So you get girls from all over. And then what's cool about it is that as you read each girl's story, it leads you into Holomoths. So I was kind of thinking the younger readers, it's a great way to have them jump into a fantasy world, but not feel like they're in this huge world build that they're not quite ready to handle yet. So it's a lot. I mean, these books are luckily, there's going to be 21 of them, but they are a lot shorter. So my normal books are around like 80 to 90,000 words, which is like, 400-page book-ish. And these will each be like 10 to 20,000 words. So it's significantly smaller. So it sounds like a lot of books. It is a lot of books, but it's not like 400 pages each. It's going to be like, 150. So I know it still sounds ridiculous.
I'm just waiting for you to drop your special on Netflix. That's what I'm waiting for.
Oh yeah, that'd be great. One day, I'll have you there with me.
Right?
I'll have you be the official.
Have you thought about like making like an adaptation just for Netflix in particular?
I definitely. So me and Tracy have been talking a lot about Netflix, and while we were editing the Heyman's trailer, we were talking about like how I should go pitch it and everything. So yeah, it's definitely been thrown around a lot. I talked to a lot of friends about it. I haven't done quite enough research, I don't think, yet to really know how to exactly go about doing that. But I do want to eventually have a visual medium for all of the books. So whether I start with Hall of Heyman's or when the Hall of Monsters trailer is done, if I start with that, I don't know. But I think it could be a pretty cool big world. I want to be like my own Disney, right? But I want like mine. Like it's not them. Not bought by them. I want my own.
That is something that you should definitely pursue because J.K. Rowling didn't expect it to blow up as much as it did, right? And now they have like this whole theme park based on what was in her head, which I thought I thought that was amazing. So I encourage everybody to kind of just go for their dream and like make that a reality.
Yeah, that'd be great. I think the coolest thing about the whole Harry Potter thing blowing up was that people kind of, when they think of Harry Potter, they kind of feel like they're home. You know what I mean? So I really want at some point when my series get bigger, that when people read them, they feel like they're at home and they feel like the characters are their friends, you know?
Okay.
So right now, some of my series are probably a little still too small, like, 3 books long, 4 books long. But as they get bigger and people start seeing how the series overlap, even though they're different series, they'll start realizing, wow, this is a way bigger world than I ever realized. And then they might start feeling like, okay, where do I fit into this world?
Yeah.
So, we'll see. But,
yeah. That's awesome. I love how you still, like, for years, you've just been with the same exact energy and then just just little increments. So like, yeah, we're just going to take it up a notch, you know?
Right. It's like we're on the ladder and we're just going rung by rung, climbing up this ladder. We'll see. I don't know. I was actually felt like I was on a bit of a groove last year, and then this quarantine hit. So I'm just, trying to make the best of it. You kind of feel like you're on a roll and you're kind of steamrolling ahead, and then life inevitably throws you hurdles, and you've got to figure out ways to hop over them. But I've been trying to work on my online store. That's tough, but
it's going to be a challenge. It's easier to have a
presence in person. Yeah, it is. I do a lot of the shows. Like I go to shows, I'm in person selling the books, and it's nice to have conversations with my readers. I've been trying to transfer that over into the online market. It's a different translation though, So like for a while, it was actually kind of interesting. I was like, okay, the more I talk about it online, the more likely people are gonna jump in and try a book, maybe if they haven't met me. But
you might have to start a live. You might have to do it live.
I know. Yeah, now you're teaching me.
Yeah.
You're showing me the way.
You're going to have to start doing this like once a week.
Yeah, I tried in the beginning of the quarantine to start doing more stories. And I don't know if you watched any of them, but I'm just a weirdo. So they were very silly. And that was fun. Like I was just like making up games that like as the moderator of the game, I would screw it up. So everyone playing along was like, what the hell? And I was like, I'm sorry.
No,
I could never be like this.
That's definitely the things that you want to do is have fun on the stories. And then the live, I think since you want to talk to people, you could have your live and then just select random people and then have a conversation with them. And then you could select a lucky person and then send them a book.
Right. That's true. Huh. Hey, anyone watching? If that sounds like a good idea to you, maybe I'll do it.
Yeah.
That's a cool idea. I gotta play with it. I actually was looking into, I texted you about it, but like lighting situations, because I was thinking about, this time last year, I was trying to do a YouTube channel and I did a pretty good job with it for about like a month and a half. And then I realized that my Wi-Fi connection out in the woods of New Jersey is not so great. And it would take, I'd have a 10-minute video and it would take 2 days to upload it.
Oh,
and I'm
wow.
like, this is a waste of money. Yeah, bad, really bad. So I would have all these videos that I want to post and it just kind of became like impractical to keep up with the YouTube channel. So I put that on hold, but I'm kind of thinking now, like if I could get, I kind of cleaned out I have a spare bedroom for my dog and I cleared it out and like I can make this into like a little studio and maybe do more, YouTube videos where I can talk about writing and my process and the things that go into it see if what type of topics people want to hear about, because I don't even know. I thought about offering, I guess it'd be like a writing coach where I could be one-on-one with someone and we could brainstorm together, or we could do some edits together, something that like that to kind of see if that was something that would help, just engagement and see if
that's probably the best option is the engagement is just getting people involved. Now, my question to you is, I know, you experience conflict. How do you resolve conflict in a book? Like, say if you hit a writer's block and you're like, I don't know how am I gonna get past this hump? Because I've been through it recently where I had created a scene for a script, and then I realized I'm making this way too easy for him to get from task A to task B without any. I mean, granted, the villain is in complete control, but she's in so much control that he's just there's no.
He's putting it.
Yeah, there's nothing stopping him from completing the task, and that's it. No, and he knows that she obviously has the one up, but to me, I felt like there was nothing to really kind of get the audience engaged, and then after,
right, you want to be moving, and you want the character to have challenges, and you want to watch them overcome it.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the best way, because I face that all the time. That happens to me all the time. I was having that, actually, the book I'm writing right now. So Eshi, she's based in Uganda, and it's wartime, So, but it's kind of interesting, you I don't know, yours is, I'm not sure what your topic is, but sometimes you can find real life things that you kind of mix in there. Sometimes, if it's fantasy, you really can just run with it. But yeah, I mean, sometimes the best thing to do, if I'm having a very serious writer's block, is just to step away sometimes. And it's really funny how my writer's blocks will sometimes get solved in the weirdest places. I'll be at the gym watching the news, and some random story will come on about rhinos, and I'm like, whoa, that's it sparked something, and then I just run with it, and I'm like, okay, that's exactly what I needed. It's very weird how that happens, but the best thing you can do, I mean, I'm sure that, I've never written a script, but I imagine that a script is pretty similar to a book in the sense of chapters, and
that's how I write it. I write it in the sense of it's a story. I wrote novels before the script, so how I'm breaking it down, if you read the script, it's no different than the story.
Okay.
So when I mapped out the scene, I mapped out the characters first, and then I mapped out the story. So then after doing some more research, I just recently watched probably 2 episodes of Samuel Jackson's Masterclass, and then I realized that the characters that are not the main characters, I didn't really give them dimension. They were just kind of figures in the story, except the main character, his name is Dennis, and then his girlfriend, she has character. I haven't really, mapped her out, but she's right now the viewer sees her as the cheater that's trying to get back with him. But but she doesn't have any,
backstory.
I have a backstory for her, but she's more so her characteristic, she just looks like blah, she's just in the room type of character, opposed to someone that has dimension. So I realized the character that's helping Dennis, he is too willing. Oh yeah, man, I need you to help me, hack my phone because this stalker has my friend hostage. And she threatens to, and then the friend was kind of how I don't know why I thought it was. He was like, "Yeah, I'll help you out. This is fun for me." What?
Right, right, yeah. You're just sometimes you gotta it's sometimes you can if you have point A to B, there can be just curves in the road. You know what I mean? So it doesn't always have to go straight to the point B. So sometimes it can be another character pops in and does something that takes them off track, and so he's trying to do her bidding or whatever, but he has, something else pops up. He gets something on his phone. Something could pop up on his phone. Maybe he gets injured, on his way to do something. You know what I mean? There's lots of weird things that can kind of stop someone from doing it, and then maybe it wakes them up to realize oh, maybe I shouldn't just do whatever the hell she's telling me to do. But it also if her character, I don't know what your backstory is for her, but it's
she's pretty much a hacker that's also she gives off hitman vibes, like an assassin vibe, and then but so how I had it, like, just to describe how wild she is, he woke up thinking that what he experienced the night before was kind of like a really elaborate wild dream, because he talks to himself, so the viewer sees him talking to another person, which is himself. So so he's thinking like that whole night, like, wow, that was such a wild dream. And then he gets a text message from that person that's like pretty much saying like, what you call it, the person, like, so his ex's friend comes over to collect her stuff, and he wasn't expecting that. And he came, so when she came in to collect her stuff, Dennis he thought that was her, and then he's like, oh, okay, you gotta, like, something happened. She sent the person that's a hitman sent them a text message stating that if this person doesn't leave, I'm going to take care of her. Scenes prior to that, she just killed some random guy the night before. So she's a real person to the audience. They know she's a real person. So you know that she's about that life. And it's and at this point, like, he's like, all right, whatever. So then he didn't answer the phone. So then next thing you know, he, instead of responding, he ignores her. Then he sees like a red dot on the girl's chest, and you're like, whoa, wait a minute. And there's like a laser pointer on this girl's chest, and you're like, so then he steps in front of it. And at that point, he realized this is a serious situation. He brushes the girl, has her go away, and then she sends him a text. She's like, next time you don't pick up the phone, it's gonna be 2 shots to the chest and 1 to the head. And then he's just like, so that was, and when I wrote that scene, that was just one of those things where I wanted to spice it up. And I was like, what if this happened? And then I realized this is absolutely perfect. Now, realistically, she did have the laser pointer on him, but when it goes to her side, it was actually just a laser pointer. In his head, he thought it was a gun.
Right. Okay. Yeah. But that's fine.
But it's not to say that she wouldn't have done it. So the audience like, oh wow, she would really do that. And then you realize, no, she was really messing with him. Either way, she would have gone to the house and done it herself. But to him, she just wants to like ruin his life and then have him incriminate himself. So that way she's pretty much using, because she messed up and she's using him to fix up her mess.
Okay. So it's like, okay, I got it. So it's like a realistic type of deal, but like it's blowing up into fantasy proportions, where it's like an ex usually doesn't come out and like try to sabotage someone by setting them up for that. But it's like kind of fun to imagine, like, what if he did?
Yeah,
like,
and it's not even his ex. It's not even his ex. It's actually a date that he had, and then his ex is just like, she's in the story. She's gonna be a major part of the story, but he's going through a breakup, and then that happens.
Got it. Okay.
So he's just like, I can't get a break.
Makes it so much worse.
Yeah.
Okay.
Someone's trying to kill me or make me do stuff, and then my ex keeps blowing up my phone. I don't want to talk to her, and he really can't talk to anybody, because if he talks to anybody, he's pretty like he's gonna kill his friend that's held hostage. So it's like it's so many things going on that he has to make a decision. If you don't do these things, then this person dies. But if you do these things, you're gonna be, guilty.
Like which path
do you choose? Let your friend die, or what can you do? So he has constant conversations with himself, and then when I wrote it in there, when he meets up with this friend, an old friend, he has to convince him. So he really has to. It can't be an easy thing. So I had him convince him, like, yo, I really need your help. So how can I have the main character Dennis convince this other friend to kind of help him with this task? I was like, oh, he has to lie to him. So, and then that's where things just escalate even more. And then watching Ozark helped also map that out even more.
Isn't it so funny how sometimes, like, so I'll be in the middle of writing a story, like you're in the middle of writing a script, and I'll be watching a show that has really nothing to do with what I'm writing. Yeah. But something, like some vibe of the show or something someone says or the way a character is, I'm like, oh, that's what I've been missing. Or that's like the vibe I want. Like I was writing Christette, which is book 2 of the Namate series. It's like high fantasy, creatures made of different materials, whatever. And I'm watching Vikings, the TV show, and I'm just marathoning it. And I was trying to figure out what the vibe was for these ruthless kids. These, like, they're made of glass, but they're like warrior children. And I'm watching Vikings, and I'm like, that's the energy. I need the energy of the Vikings for these little glass children, as they're running through the forest hunting animals and stuff. So, but it's so weird how inspiration come that way. Like, I feel like any medium of creativity can really bring that out of you, especially for writer's block. Sometimes it just is a matter of read another book, watch another show, listen to music or something you haven't listened to before. And sometimes it'll just come, like, go look at paintings. You know what I mean? It can really come from anywhere. And then suddenly you're like, oh, I'll sometimes sit on Pinterest. I don't know if you use Pinterest or not. Okay, so sometimes I'll sit on Pinterest, like, even just at the start of a day. Like, I might not even be having writer's block yet, but I'll just kind of like, I need to get into the mood. I need to get into a creative mood. So because I mostly pin, poetry and quotes and different types of artwork, when I go on Pinterest, it's just like creative, like, explosion. So I'm getting all types of creative stuff the second I open the page. So I'll just scroll a bit, and sometimes it just puts me in the mood where I'm like, oh, I'm feeling super deep and, like, expressive. And then I'll jump into my own manuscript. It has nothing to do with what I was looking at on Pinterest, but I just got myself into, like, a mood,
Yeah.
So it's just weird how sometimes, like, something that you never thought would be the catalyst to help you get over a writer's block will be it.
Yes, it's just like, it's funny how it happens, but I always have my Google Note, like, just ready to go, because that's where I've been writing my stuff. So the moment I go on there, I'm like, I have a separate thing. It's like an outline version of it, and I just write down, like, all right, now this character is gonna be doing this, and this. This is how he's gonna dress, which makes sense. So essentially, Dennis is going to give a code saying, like, essentially, he is under the impression that he wants to buy weed, but he really doesn't want to buy weed. He actually wants to ask him something else. He's like, oh, I know you used to hack and blah, blah. And then that's when he's trying to convince him to, like, oh, yeah, I just need a favor to do this. And that's when I'm just like, I was just watching Honey Boy not too long ago. And I
started that.
Yeah, that movie was pretty good.
Yeah, it was good. I have issues. I have very bad ADD. So I'll start something and it was really good, but, like, something else pulls me away. I'm like, I need to go back to that. Like, I was enjoying it. Why did I stop?
Yeah.
No, but go on. Keep going.
The vibe of Honey Boy was just like, I like how everything kind of just flowed, and then they held on to shots longer and whatnot. And the characters in there were it felt so real that it didn't feel like they were just kind of just pieces to the story, like extras or anything like that. So I was like, cool. Let me take that into account, because I wanted, I made the short, but I want this one to be a little more extra and come off as like a full film, opposed to something that just comes off as like this. I've escalated in maturity in writing, and I wanted to kind of reflect that.
Yeah, for sure. And, like, with the characters, so, like, building up the secondary characters. So now, something I had an issue with in the beginning of my writing with some of my earlier books was that I was very hell-bent on everyone having their story. But sometimes you do have to kind of pick and choose, like, who needs to have a story and who doesn't, because you will bog down the bigger storyline and the main characters if you're constantly telling who everyone is. So that was something I had to learn. So, like, but there is something to be said about finding the happy medium. And you can do that sometimes. So while you're writing versus the filming part will be different, obviously. So, like, when you show it, it's a lot easier to show certain things. But I found moving forward in writing that I can build who a person is, one, by what they say, two, by what gets narrated in between dialogue. So basically, instead of having a huge block of narration and constantly explaining things, I can have two very interesting characters having a conversation. And in between what they're saying, it's like, oh, this is where you learn that their eyes are this color. And this is where you learn that, like, you just look about them, versus going on for a stupid amount of time. Like, these are all the things you need to know about this person, Okay. So it's like things like that. But if you want, I think if there's so for her character, for example, it sounds like she'll be very important moving forward, right?
Yeah.
With this. So it could be the things she says, especially in a filming sense, the things she says can be so telling. And then once you have the actress on board, you know, the way she expresses it, she could be saying one thing and then suddenly, but her face is saying something different, obviously, you know? So it's like, you can kind of get to know a little bit more about people that way.
I've learned too that, like you said with the narration, where I was explaining too much and I didn't show action. Like there's scenes that I've realized in my other one that was so dialogue heavy that shout out to the actors for actually delivering the lines. Because,
it is good. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was just like I should have just had certain things where scenes could have been left where it was just the scene without any talking or forced dialogue. All right, you have this scene, so you have to throw some dialogue. I could have had scenes where he was looking at old pictures of himself and then he decides to leave. Like all the scenes that required just an emotion, no narration. I was like, you know what? Let me just put some voices in there. And I'm saying to myself, like, I've watched a couple movies and they just let the scene just rock out, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Less is always more. And it took me, I'm on my, 12th, or I think I'm on my 12th book now with writing. I've published the 11. And like, I think, it took me a while to figure it out. You know, less really is more. And you think you're doing less, but you're not always doing less. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, I just got a review on one of my older books recently that was saying half the things I had learned. So, you know, it's like things like that where it's like, it's inevitable, but, you know, like you grow. That's why we're human beings, you know?
Yeah.
So, but I have learned, and I think it's funny because after you said that, I was just thinking about to myself, you know, showing versus telling. Same exact thing for a novel, but it's different. I find when you're showing in a novel, it tends to be through the dialogue, which with a film, you can just show it. You don't have to say anything at all, you know? So dialogue, and then obviously action scenes where things are happening within the narration. It's not just telling about something. But yeah, less is more for sure. And it's like succinct as you can be too. Like you can, you know, something that is said in 3 sentences can sometimes be said in 1, you know? So it's like a matter of like condensing. So for me, you know, the first 2 books I wrote, I always had my editors and I, you know, always went through it a million times, but it took a while to become like ruthless with myself in editing.
Yeah.
You know, like when you're reading your own stuff and just like slice and dice and just be ruthless and you can't really be too sentimental about it. But for the first draft, just do what comes out and then go back and tear it apart.
And that's what I have problems with, is just going just through it, because there's certain conversations that, like, I feel like, all right, so what's the best approach? Because I feel like I always get stopped at, should I just write through, as dumb as the dialogue may be, and just finish it and get it over with, and with the story still intact? Because the dialogue is kind of like, it's not there yet. Like, I could write out the story and have it progress. That's easy.
Yeah.
But the dialogue sometimes is just like, I feel like I just need to power through it, or I'm just going to stop and think of, the dialogue needs to be like this, like it's poetry.
It gets you in your head.
Yeah. Because I have to be multiple people. And it's usually 2 people talking with each other. It's never, I don't have a lot of multiple people except for one scene, which I said, I'm going to have 3 people interact with each other. But it's always like 1 and 2.
I think the best way to go about it, I mean, first off, everyone's different. So there will be some people that would say, just fix it up while you're writing it because it saves you time later. It sounds to me like the best approach would be just to get it out of you. And then as long as you can go back with like take yourself out of it and pretend it's not something you wrote, how would you make it better? You know what I mean? So then you're not so connected to it, because it feels very personal. It feels like, no, I liked it. I know why I wrote it that way because it felt so true to me. But then if you read it as somebody else, you're like, oh, that's corny, or that's not getting the point across, or why are they saying the same thing 5 times in 5 different ways? You know what I mean? Like, I actually went back to Heyman's, like, after writing it. I think it was before I published it, but like, I had to go through this one set of dialogue at the back of the book, which is like a very, very, very intense scene. And I realized, there was this one, I forget what it was, but there was one like powerful line, and I found like a couple different ways to say it, and I had the character say it each way. I'm like, just pick one of them. You got to pick one. Everyone gets what you're saying. You know, you don't want to like beat a dead horse or whatever the saying is. You know.
Is that sometimes tough when have you ever found yourself creating a character and then you have another character that kind of is like the same character, and you're like,
yeah. hold on.
You can't be the same person.
It's like, no, you need to go away. You're distracted. Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, that's another big thing is making sure all the characters have their own voice and they are their own person. So I don't know. I can't tell you exactly how I do it, but I think that so when I was younger, I did acting and I like did a lot of that stuff. So I think when I write, I really do put myself in as the character. Like I wouldn't say I black out. That's kind of intense, but like I kind of get tunnel vision as I'm writing.
Yeah.
So as I'm writing, I'm there. Like, and I'm empathizing with the characters and whoever I'm writing about, I try to really be there with them. So it doesn't always work, but I think more times than not, when you really are just there with them, they will have their own voice if you're really trying to feel whatever it is that they're feeling. That being said, when I've had to write really emotional scenes or really tough topics for a character, I get serious. It's not even writer's block. It's more of a, man, there's this one storyline. It's actually, so this one of my bigger books, it has a couple of tough storylines. One is like the death of an animal in like a really mess up way. The other is like a pedophile type of deal. And it's like awful. And I don't like those topics. And as a human being in my real world, those are things that make me cry,
Yeah.
So writing it, I knew exactly what I had to write. There was no writer's block, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. You know what I mean? So, but I think that's also a testament to like, okay, well, you're really feeling it with the character. So hopefully, fingers crossed, when the reader gets to it, they're going to feel it too. Whenever the hell you finally get it written, you know? But so I think there's something to be said about like, feeling it as you're writing it. And I think that also will help with developing those secondary characters, because if you are there with them, even if they don't have huge parts and they're not meant to be the main focus right now, as you're writing them, if you're really kind of like there with them, you might be able to develop them a little bit more because you're kind of like invested in them.
So you think I should create a character and kind of sit with them in my head before I could really deliver that particular line of how they would say it?
Yeah, possibly. Not always. I think especially if you're trying to have them have a specific voice, possibly. I also think like sometimes like as you're writing, which might be also to your other question, is just write. Don't try to edit as you write. Just run with it. Because when you're running with it, you can be in the story. You know what I mean? Like that's why when I write, sometimes I'll kind of like try to tweak a couple lines, make sure I'm saying it as best as I can. But for the most part, I'm like, just go. Just write it because you're in the moment with the characters. So whether I'm talking about my current story, Eshi or her brother Mondi, right? They're different people. They have different personalities. But as I'm writing it, if I'm really there with them, I'm going to speak how they speak because I'm like jumping with them. I'm like running with them. So yeah, one thing could be that you could just sit with the characters and just kind of feel like get to know them in your head. Another would be just to, sometimes I have some writer friends, what they'll do is they will have, full-blown character outlines, which, everyone does to some extent, but they will, like, these are serious, like, this way more than what I do, like, serious character outlines with, like, facts about these people that you never learn in the story, right? It's, like, kind of, like, irrelevant stuff, but then they really, really know the character. So, I mean, but everyone's different. Like, I don't necessarily need to do that, but I can see why it's helpful, if you aren't quite sure who that person is yet, or I really do, though, think that you can have your audience get to know a secondary character just by how they act and what they say. And then later on, you can give the backstory. But definitely don't bog down. If it's not her story, don't bog it down with her backstory.
Okay.
Yeah, don't. I mean, you can give hints for sure, because then people will love getting that hint later on and being like, oh, that's why she was wearing that, or that's why she said that. And then they're like, oh, versus like in the first story, like I think, what was it? Might have been Watchmen. Okay. I'm trying to think what I watched recently that I felt like they forced the backstory on me. And I was a little annoyed because it wasn't the storyline of that episode. It was something that could have come later.
You're talking about the show. Okay. No, I thought you were talking about the movie. I didn't even watch the show yet. Okay.
Yeah, the show. I think I can't. I watched it. I watched it like in December or January, so I don't really remember which storyline it was, and I'm not even sure if it was that show. But I've had it happen where you're watching something and they pull you out of it to tell you something that's not like the main focus, and you're like, "Wait, why are you telling me this?" And it could have happened more gradually over time. You know,
okay.
some characters don't need it all at once. You can just let them know slowly. So,
okay, because I have something like that I was going to introduce it in the beginning, which I did subtle. Like there was a death in the beginning of this person that was murdered, and that's why the detective is on the case. And this is the same story. So instead of saying who it is or showing who it is, it was just kind of like him narrating and showing what he went through in his perspective and certain things. And then, but the audience knows it's definitely the person that Dennis is dealing with because of the word that was blood was painted on the wall in the bathroom saying Midnight Chaser. So we definitely know that she's linked. So you don't know what she is and who she is until like towards the end when it's like revealed. And I found like, I don't know if you ever checked it out, but there's a Rick and Morty had one of the co-creators has a story circle, and it's called Dan Harmon's Story Circle. And I use that to actually graft out this particular story and other stories, but this main one, which is the way it's broken down, is absolutely priceless. And I advise if you want to actually check that out. It's called the Dan Harmon Circle. Dan Harmon's Circle. Story Circle. Okay. And is it on Netflix or HBO? Or you could find, honestly, it's just a chart that you could find on Google, and it's just like a visual chart on how the story will progress, and they use that every episode. And how I had it in my head and how the story is structured, it made everything so much easier to kind of transition, because I would have just walked aimlessly in certain situations, get into that point, and I was like, you know what, I could push her reveal a little later. And it just, and then with her character too, like it's like hidden stuff that she's done that was off camera, opposed to showing it on camera, which I feel would be like a backstory.
Yeah, sometimes it's more fun, I find, as a viewer or as a reader, whatever the case may be, to feel like there's a little bit of a mystery. Like I'm following it, and you got to give enough clues. You don't want to leave people hanging in the dark and being like, "Where the hell did this come from?" Like it's a total surprise. But like if you're getting pieces to the puzzle, just enough that by the end you're like, "Oh, okay," and then "Oh, now I understand who she is. Now I understand why she is the way she is." Whatever the case may be. Sometimes it also keeps people engaged that way. You know, it kind of keeps them hanging on because they're like, "I need to understand why." You know, they want to know why someone's doing what they're doing or why they are the way they are. And if you give it to them in pieces and stages, it keeps them hanging on to the bigger storyline as well. So if there's a couple different, methods and thought processes as to why to do that, I personally think from an engagement standpoint, it's more interesting not to get it all right away. Yeah. Because you want people to be like intrigued. You want them to want to keep going. And if they have it all, they're like, okay, well, hopefully they're engaged enough in the main story that they're not, which they should be, but like if, to hang on just to that versus you have two things that they're hanging on to. One, this backstory is getting pieced together, and also the main storyline, So, yeah, I don't know. And then like, it's the same thing, like, like chapters versus scenes, which I always say is comparable. I always say, make sure every chapter, every scene has a purpose. So if there isn't some kind of action, which should be throughout the whole story anyway, some kind of character development, some kind of plot twist, something that's just moving everybody forward. I had a big issue, like you were just saying, something about like roaming, like I'm just roaming until I get to the end, right? Well, but that's the truth. Like that, it happens so easily. Like the first book I ever wrote, and it was the first lesson I ever learned was that have a direction. Like if you don't know where you're going, sit down and outline, don't sit down and write. Like I wrote, so a normal novel, like a fantasy novel, you don't really want to go too much over 100,000 words. 110 is okay, but you want to stay around there. There's obviously exceptions, but you want to try to keep it in that word count. I was at 150,000 words. Like that is 50,000 words too many. That's a whole nother book. And this is all, that's, and that's within the first book. So, my editor was very thrilled, honest with me and kind. He was just like, he's like, no. I'm like, it's your first book, so it's your baby. And I'm like, oh my God. But it was a very, very, very important lesson. It was like, I was rambling. I for sure was rambling, but it's like you learn and like, what is the point of this? Is there a point? There's not a point. Cut it. Don't need it. You know what I mean? So
I had to cut a few scenes, and then I had to boost up some scenes. I had to add some scenes, which it was funny because when you start something, you have this in your head. You're like, yeah, this is how the story is gonna start. But that was good for you as the writer. But for the audience, it was kind of like, how about this? Instead of just going straight at it, because how I had the short film end, I want to start it as if it was a standalone, and then kind of leak, and then kind of bleed into like, oh wait, now we're into this story now. It's still the story from what we originally saw.
That's awesome. That's like such a good tactic. Like that's what I do. I started doing in my later books was like, okay, we got books like by my Namate series, which is like one of my more recent series. You know, you start with one story, you get a parallel story. Then by book 3, they connect, but they don't connect where you think. You start with a brand new character, and you're like, who is this? And then you eventually get the story that you had been following. That's awesome. That's like a really cool way to like kind of open it and everyone be like, ooh, I don't know what this is.
That one I subconsciously got from Supernatural, where they'll just show you someone in the beginning, and then something happens, and then the stories kind of collide, and then they link up, and then that's what it'll go down in this, the rest of the film. I'm like, wait a minute. I was like, what? I need to do that, and that's what kind of transitions it.
Yeah, sorry, the wind just blew my door. I was like, someone's here.
Yeah.
No, they're not.
Yeah, the wind has been knocking.
I know, it's crazy. I'm just like, my dog just jumped up. I'm like, oh my gosh, no one's here. But yeah, no, it really is a great way to. It's also a good way to transition between chapters too sometimes, and it's also or scenes. It's also a great way to start a scene. Sometimes you think if chapter 2 ends and then we open the door to whatever. Chapter 3 doesn't have to be with opening or entering into whatever. You can jump ahead or jump at like an action point. So sometimes it's a really good. Rich actually. So Rich is one of my beta readers, and he gave me some really good advice one time. Is like, you don't have to, start at the action. Like you don't always have to start right. You don't have to explain everything. Just start where it's interesting. Okay. So then you try it. And you're like, oh, it actually works this way. So that's a kind of cool thing too. Is kind of just start where it's interesting. So, and that's another thing to say, like, just write it all out, get it all written, you know what I mean? Get it out of you. And then with that in your head, go back and be like, well, where is it in chapter 4? Okay, this is what I wrote. Where does it actually get interesting? Okay, paragraph 3. Okay, so whatever was actually important in 1 and 2, find a way to weave it into the rest of the chapter, but start at that other paragraph. And like get people, like the second they turn that chapter page, they're like, whoa, what are we doing here? Why are they flying? Why, why is this person threatening that person? Versus a whole paragraph of explanation leading into the action.
Yeah. Sometimes you just gotta kind of jump into the action, and opposed to just kind of building up to it. Because I was just thinking of a scene that I just threw in there. I was trying to surprise myself in that moment, which that's how I did it with the first one. Which I was like, what if a laser pointer, like someone was pointing a laser at that particular person? Like, in your head, you've seen all these movies. It's a sniper in the room. What are you gonna do? You're gonna panic.
Right.
And I was like, but this is like in my head, I'm like, what kind of movie is this? Like, it doesn't matter.
Right, yeah. Sometimes it doesn't. I mean, it really depends. Like, it's all contextual, it depends on what the situation is. But a lot of times, like, go for it. Like, seriously, like, even if it feels like, oh, this is out there, who cares, As long as it makes sense in the end, and make sure it's not, like, totally abstract. I'm actually writing a series right now. Before I jumped into the Champion books, and I'm going to finish it, but I've been writing this collection of dark fairy tales that is the most Inception abstract type thing I've ever written. And I wasn't really planning on it being that way. And as I started writing, I was like, what kind of Frankenstein am I building? I was like, this is insane. This could be very cool, but man, I better do this right or people are going to pick it up and be like, what the hell am I don't even know what I'm reading right now, So I think there is a fine, like, I have to be very careful with it. Like, I want to make sure that, like, balls to the wall, just go for it, who cares, right? But make sure that, like, it really does make sense. So I'm going to really try to recruit a whole bunch of beta readers for that one to make sure that, like, if they're saying they don't get it, a lot of other people aren't going to get it. You know what I mean? So that's why it's also sometimes nice to have outside people, even if it's not like a seasoned writer or a seasoned editor, just someone that enjoys movies or enjoys reading books, take a look at it. Does it make sense? Are you enjoying it? Like the simple questions. If they say I don't understand, okay, well, you got a really big problem. You know what I mean? Unless like it's something that like you've explained. If you point it out to them, like, oh, I might have read over that or something. But for the most part, if someone says they're not understanding, you want to take a step back and think about like, how can I fix it so that the majority of people will, you know? So there's an art of being subtle, but being too subtle, you know?
Yeah, it takes practice. Some people think that you could just jump right into like that, having that style. Like you can only get that style if you failed so many times.
Yeah, and that's why it's so good if you can have people that are willing to like read it for enjoyment. You know, they're just reading it because they want to enjoy it and just have something to read. And then they can let you know, oh gosh, you missed the plot. Oh my god, you know, it happens to people. But like when you're in a story and it's like consuming your mind, everything's mapped out in your head, but you don't realize that you didn't say something that you needed to say. You know, so a beta reader will pick up those things hopefully, where they're like, you never answered this question. Oh shit, I meant to, you know, and you can go back and when you catch it in the editing phase, you can go back and fix it.
Now that leads me to my next question. How do you incorporate feedback into your work?
So the big things are, did you enjoy it? Certain characters, you want to evoke certain feelings. So like, you know, the main characters, it's okay if a person doesn't love the main character. You do want to make sure that the main character doesn't turn them off so much that they stop reading. So I've had issues with that before too, where it's like, okay, I got to tweak this person a bit so that they're a little bit more redeemable, you know? So those type of things, if someone is supposed to be liked and someone hates them, there's a whole nother problem. So it's like, you know, seeing how people like or dislike a character based off what you intended as the writer. If they hate them and you wanted them to hate them, that's perfect. That's exactly what you wanted. But so I after I finish writing something, I'll give it out to like beta readers, my editor, and then like I said in the beginning, it's not as easy to critique because everything is your baby. You know, it's like it came out of you, and it's just tough to want to fix it. But then you learn pretty quickly, hopefully, for most people. Just listen. Doesn't mean you have to take every critique. You know, if someone just on some fundamental level is just against something or other that you wrote in the book, it's like, okay, well, that's your personal opinion. But yeah, I like to listen to people because usually it's like everyone has a different viewpoint. You know, like, I mean, that goes for everything in the world where it's like, if you can't listen and be subjective, doesn't mean you have to apply it, but at least listen to it and take it for what it's, you know what I mean? And see if it could enhance the story in any way, enhance the characters in any way. I definitely take, you know, for my editors and stuff, when there's like grammatical, I mean, that's a little different because my stuff with a script, you know, the actors will see it. Unless you ever publish the scripts, like you actually have them get published for people to read.
No, I had one. So what happened is one of my friends, she's like, she has a master's in writing and whatnot. I had sent her most of my scripts that I take for like serious. I would send it to her and she would like, you know, destroy it and shred it. And it would just come back to me and this red ink mess. Yeah, no, but I love when she does that because then it forces me to really look at the story for what it is. And it kind of, some of the stuff that I was writing didn't make sense. Like one of them, I was a different script that I was writing. And I said that a CIA agent is like a detective is working with a CIA agent. And then she read everything that I wrote. But then she was like, you're wrong with that. It's mainly because CIA agents cannot operate on U.S. soil because there's conflict of interest with FBI. I did not know this. So she broke it down and I was like, and she had like the little notes on the side. And so a CIA can only operate on U.S. soil when accompanied by an FBI agent.
So that's a really, really great point just for a whole nother topic within this topic is research.
Yes.
It's so important. And that's something that like, you know, you do the best you can sometimes, you know, not everyone can know everything. And but you do the best you can, and it is important to do research. Like one of the reviews I got recently, like, you know, I mentioned Wicca, which is a religion, but I put a fantasy spin on it, but they didn't realize I put a fantasy spin on it. So they were getting very nitpicky on me about the fact that I didn't talk about certain things about the religion. I'm like, I wasn't really trying to go too into it, on purpose. You know what I mean? But and like right now I'm doing all this research about Africa, and I'm like trying so hard to learn as much as I can to make sure that, while this family is running into Kenya, that I'm like getting it right, and also this happens in the mid 90s, and there's no articles about the mid 90s anymore. And I'm like on Google trying to find this stuff, and it's just tough. Yeah, it's like it's amazing how hard it is to find things that should not be that hard to find. And I'm like, maybe I have to go find, like, actually go to a library, which of course I can't. Everything is closed right now. But but research. So it's good that your friend, was doing that on your behalf for that particular thing. But
yeah, because that could have easily went right over her head, and she could have just been editing for the story and character. But because she pointed that out, that actually changes the entire story, basically. Because if she's working with someone who's the main character is working with someone who's FBI, that makes more sense than CIA, and they operate in a different way completely, which would have changed what dialogue she was saying to him.
Got it. Yeah, that makes you as a writer have to sit back and be like, oh boy, now I got to remap this. I got to do a whole bunch of edits. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's important. It's good. Like, I appreciate, like, when I give something to someone, to, like, whether it's an editor, obviously, like, if you're paying someone, they better come back with a whole bunch of stuff. And, even if you don't use it all, it just helps you grow. Even if you're just seeing someone else's perspective on writing, how to properly phrase something, how to do the dialogue. It doesn't mean you have to take it, but you can see it and maybe put your own twist on it, or take half of what they're saying, or take the whole thing if it's way better than what you're doing. So it's like, there's different levels, but it's so good to listen and to absorb as much as you can. So I even if it feels like you look at it, you're like, oh my God, like it's just torn apart and it's like nothing is the same anymore. It's still, I appreciate it so much when someone, it's also like a compliment that they took the time to actually dive in and really want to help, because they're not doing it to be mean. That you ask them for help, they're trying to help. So I think anyone who's ever asked to be a beta reader, it's like, the more you can give, the better, so, and whether the person takes it or not, it's like, you have to have hard skin and not be too sensitive about it, but it'll only make you better. That's for sure.
Absolutely. So, you got to take criticism, and as long as it's creative, and constructive criticism, opposed to be like, yeah, that scene don't make sense. Why did it not make sense? That's exactly. You can't just say it doesn't make sense without giving your point of view. Yeah. No, it just doesn't. That and also I find that when there's different ways to say things. So like, you can like rip something apart and be like super constructive and kind about it, and then you can also rip something apart and be a total jerk about it. You know what I mean? Like, there's different ways to go about it. But those are the people you don't ask for help again. You know what I mean? If they do that once, they're like, you could have been a lot nicer about that. Exactly. It's I think that happened one time. I think I had someone edit it, and it was so ripped apart to the point where I was just like, did you even like it?
Did you get anything good out of it?
Did you get anything good out of it? I know I'm not like the best writer in the world, but I felt like it was just like it was edited to the point where like, don't ever write again.
Oh no. Yeah, it happens. I'm sure I've had some, especially my first book I ever wrote. Oh my God. My editor was probably like, I hope this girl doesn't hire me again. And I did. But I think he saw that I was listening, and he was, I think, excited about that. The fact that, okay, I tore it apart, and yes, he didn't see me get all sensitive about it, but I was like, I took a moment to myself. I'm like, compose yourself. It's okay. And then take what's good out of that and become better. Right. Yeah. So, sorry, my dog decided that he was going to throw his bunny around.
Oh, wow. We got a special guest.
Yeah, no, Bubba. He's bored by me and this quarantine.
Oh, yeah. I don't blame him.
Yeah. And then now with the parks closed, we're in my house, and he's 140 pounds. He's a bull mastiff. He's huge. So he's tearing around my house, throwing things, and he just needs to get his energy out. So I feel so bad. So I'm excited this weekend to finally take him back to a park and be like, get it out of my house.
Right? Just let it out, so that way I don't have to be bothered by your energy.
They're throwing stuffed animals at my face, But yeah, no, it's good when you can take something and grow from it and become better. And I think that's part of the things. And that's why, I think it's such a cool, especially with writing, because it is a self journey too. It's so self-exploratory, when you first start to where you get to after writing quite a things, it's like you're like a whole new person sometimes, especially if you are listening and you are doing what you can to evolve as a writer, basically. So, yeah, I mean, it's crazy. And then I still feel like I actually just started trying to write in first person. So most of my novels are all third person. And then when I started writing the dark fairy tales, I just felt these feel like a first person kind of story. And then it evolved into like, I'm really glad I wrote them in first person. And so that was a whole nother learning curve, because there does tend to be a little bit more narration, because it is supposed to be introspective and you're really hearing what this person, this character you're in their point of view, what they're feeling and why they think what they think. And so I was like, all those things I learned about not telling too much in narration, it's not that it goes away, but there is a different balance for that when you're writing in first person. So when you write scripts, it's in third, right?
When I write scripts, it is in third, but I actually, this character, I'm trying to detach myself because it's loosely based off of me.
Oh, okay.
So pretty much it's a little of me and it's a little not of me. So I'm trying to respond in a situation where they're like, when they try to be clever and whatnot. So in order for this to work for me, I actually created his persona, like that. The person that he's talking to is actually me talking to him.
Oh, okay. Cool.
So I had to rip it out from him instead of me, like, because he would have been too smart. So I'm like, all right, he has to conflict with the person that he's talking to. He's talking to himself. The person that he's talking to, like, in himself, in his head, is the subconscious, which is right, and like you should go about it like this. Yeah. But he kind of like, he's so fearful that he's actually being so much doubt that he actually the character that everybody sees is the one that's now afraid and now has to do, and not sure of themselves and has to lie and do all these things to protect other people. Meanwhile, the other person inside his head is like, no, you need to do it like this, and this.
Got it. Okay. Interesting. So it's like a play on who you are.
Yeah, exactly. It's a play on who I am. It's like self-conflict on kind of responding to a situation instead of him just saying like, yeah, I'll do that. No, he has to be like
bounce it back and forth and decide. Yeah, that's cool. Exactly. No, that's really cool. And then when it's based off you, it does add a different layer of from a writer's perspective. Like when you're that involved, you want to also make sure that one character I have in one of the books is not based off me, but she's like the most like me, I guess I would say. But some of the things she went through in the first version of the book was very much what I went through. And I went back and read it a couple of years later. I'm like, oh my God. It was like, delete. This is like TMI. Like, oh my God.
That's like, that was, right? It's funny because it's just like, when did I let this leak out of me and then into paper? Like I didn't expect this to happen.
Yeah. And I think that goes to say for the whole thing of like, I feel like all creative outlets are a form of therapy, right? So writing included. So it is, sometimes when you're writing something that's super fresh to you, you do have to then let it sit for a little bit. That's something I learned. It's like, let it sit and then come back to it and decide like, oh, we really don't have to go into all of that, or the character doesn't have to deal with all those things, or this feels oddly specific, maybe no one else would know that. But for me, I'm like, oh, Lord,
right? Before we get cut off, because we have 10 seconds left. Okay. I'm gonna bring it back again, and then we could finish off, and then we'll go again. Okay. All right, hold
on. Okay, yeah.
Okay. Welcome back.
Welcome back. We lost everyone. Oops.
Right? Nah, I completely, because I saw the time on my recorder, but then I realized like it doesn't really show a live recording of how much time is left in the room one now. But at least they're coming back. Awesome. Shout out to y'all.
Yay, thanks everyone for coming back. Sorry about that.
But yeah, I wanted to ask you one last question. What was the last book that you read? And did that book inspire anything new that you might want to write?
So this is going to be probably an unpopular answer. I have, it is, you should be reading. You should always be reading new stuff. I think in the past couple of years, I've had an issue where like part of like what I said earlier in this chat was that I have so many things on my to-do list that I get a little frazzled and I jump from thing to thing and I get distracted. So I was last book I tried reading was Kurt Vonnegut Galapagos, and it was very good. But I found I was having trouble retaining the story. So I would read it at night, wake up, write my own stuff, go back to read it at night, and I would forget everything I read from the night before. So I was having trouble because I was writing my own world. So I actually just recently bought the Grimm's fairy tales, and it was a different, oh gosh, what are there? It was another set of fairy tales. So I was thinking if I can like jump into something like that. One, I can see the formatting of a fairy tale. I thought I was writing fairy tales in this new thing I was writing, and it turns out they are actually novelettes, not even novellas. They're like, so a novelette is like around 10,000, 15,000 words. A novella is around 30,000 words, and a fairy tale is like 1,000 words, right? So way shorter. And so it's like, maybe if I read these fairy tales, I was thinking about taking like Humans, Hall of Mosses, all of my stories that are already out, and creating true fairy tale, like 1,000-word count versions of it. So at my shows, when someone goes and buys Hall of Mosses, I can be like, oh, well, look, I also have this collection of fairy tales. You can read the same stories that your mom is reading, but it would be for the kids. So it would be like, so like Juniper thinks the trees are talking to her in this one, right? And obviously there's all the champions that come. In the fairy tale, I would just focus on the positive things, and I would focus on the trees and Juniper, and I would keep it super short, and I would have an illustrator kind of make a picture for it. And but yeah, so I went off on a tangent. Sorry, I haven't like the last thing I read was Kurt Vonnegut Galapagos, and I didn't finish it, but it was really good, and I was enjoying it. But I was thinking this quarantine, I have been getting really sick of Netflix, so this is a great time to like get myself back together and really dive into something. So I do tend to find a lot of inspiration from, like I said, music, TV shows, like looking at like photography or looking at artwork. I'll take a picture and I like to create like a backstory, you know what I mean? Or I take the energy of it, like, whoa, what world did that painting come from? You know what I mean? And then build a world around it. So that's kind of where I tend to get my inspiration, is more things like that. I do though, figure out what to read next. So if someone has a recommendation, send it my way.
I got a book that you could read. It's called Tools of Titans. Okay. And that book, I read that. I haven't. It's literally the size of an almanac. Hold on. Okay. This is how thick this book is.
Oh, it's thick. Okay.
Yeah. It's pretty much the size of my head.
600 page. Yeah. Jeez, whoa, that is big. Yeah.
So pretty much that book has like a whole bunch of like whether it's health gurus, businessmen, women, people who just have a lot of wisdom, and it has like each chapter.
Is it like a fantasy, like a fiction, or is it a nonfiction?
No, it's a fiction. No, it's like a self-help book, except it's just kind of motivating, and it's each chapter is a different person. Like Tony Roberts in there, Tony Robbins in there, a couple other people in there that you know, and it's like Arnold Schwarzenegger giving out tips on like how he kind of became the person that he was. And the funny thing with him, when I was reading his part, was when he started doing acting, he made more money in real estate because he got into that before acting.
Oh, okay.
So he was selling property in like California and other places with his business partner, and he was making so much more money than he was acting. Yeah. And then the acting part he was doing for fun, essentially.
Yeah, it's very interesting how people come to where they get to, you know, like how people get where they're going, you know? So that sounds so Tools of Titans.
Yeah, okay. Tool of the Titans. Actually, no, it's called Tool of Titans. Tool of Titans. Okay. Yeah. You know what I realized I read? Superbud by our buddy Mike. Oh yeah, Superbud. Shout out to Mike.
Shout out to Mike. I read that just the other day. I read issues 1, 2, and 3. It's very good. So, but yeah, it's fun. Like, it was fun because I'm like, oh man, when I read it too, I was like, man, I need to get a book. I need to figure out what book I want to read because I got to jump into something that's gonna like. I just want to escape that way. I want to get away from the screens. You know what I mean? I'm like really, I feel like I'm cross-eyed half the time, you know, between TV, my laptop, my phone. I'm just like, this is too much. So yeah, Tool of Titans. Okay. And then I got to find some good fantasy reads. I know there's tons. I have tons of people. I've asked for recommendations before. It's just like, I think the issue is like when you're building a world and it's in your head, like it's hard to explain how much of your whole person that takes up. So then until it gets out, I always think like, okay, once I finish this, I'm gonna take a break, pick something else up, read something, take a break, and then jump in. And I always just jump right into something new, which is my problem. So
yeah. It's only
but,
you're only human, just like us. So just like, maybe you want to do this, maybe you want to do that.
I know. And then I get these ideas for like all like, you know, the book trailers and photo shoots we did, and then, you know, I want to do audiobooks. There's so many things that like my head's always spinning around because, like I said, like my background isn't actually writing. Like I came from I was in theater, you know, like I did like visual stuff my whole life. So when I write these stories, I'm very much in a visual space. And then I'm always thinking like, well, what comes next? You know, like what can I do with this? So my brain is constantly on fire, basically.
That sounds like it might be a play next. If you make like a little short, and then it could be like a play.
Maybe I should start doing that in my Instagram. I'll just start making like, you know, 5-minute like inside the brain of Nikki, and it's like psycho.
Right?
I'll like act out skits, and like it won't even be like anything helpful.
You should do like, book readings.
Yeah, I thought that. So one of the lights I was looking at actually had colors. I was like, how cool would it be? So like, this is my armoire of memories, okay? But one of the things in here is my Heyman's crown, right? So I was like, how cool would it be? The classic Heyman's crown. So how cool would it be like, you know, it's like, have like close up, have the red light, and then just read like an excerpt from Heyman's, right? So like, I thought of it. It's just a matter of now, like, do it, you know, just do it and see if anyone likes it. And if it's weird, it's fine. You know?
Yeah, just do it. Just literally read it. And then if people, it doesn't matter if they, you know, check in, like, just record yourself. You either record yourself or you could, use your phone and do like an Instagram live of you just reading like an hour of a time, and then just read it out, and then that's it.
Where does the Instagram live go once it's over?
It goes to like there's the story, and then right next to it is another tab that says live.
Got you. Okay, so
and it'll show that.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. All right.
I recommend honestly that you just record it like with like your phone or something, so you don't have to worry about getting cut off. And like I'm gonna read like one chapter, so each chapter that you read, and then you could like
and then just upload it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I started doing. I was really excited about like continuing it too. I started doing IG stories, and you know I always did it for my YouTube, where my mom at my book shows kind of just like take little snippets of all of my favorite people that come to my booth and everything. So that way, it's like one, for me, it's like nostalgic, and two, it's kind of nice when you go and you kind of like, oh, there I was, you know, like, and see that you like pop up. But then the shows all got canceled. So I was like, damn, I had something going. I had like, you know, my IG stories were like, oh, Chicago, and it was going to be Seattle, but then Seattle got taken over by Corona, and I'm like,
yeah, it's like a whole battle. But I think you have a better chance. I think this might be an opportunity to open up. Like, all right, say I'm not traveling now, I could do this. So it's like a sure way. Yeah. And even if you are traveling, you could still do that and still entertain the audience and have them more involved.
Right. Yeah. I was supposed to be doing a library reading actually today. I was supposed to be at a library in Mendham, New Jersey. But then the person who runs the library is really cool, and she's like, hey, well, would you rather maybe you can still do a reading of the book on video? So then that sparked my mind, where I'm like, well, if I'm going to do a video for her, I should like really start to do other stuff too. Like, what am I doing? You know, like while I have everything set up, like I did a book photo shoot the other day of just my books, right? And what a freaking process, because I don't have the right equipment. So like I'm moving all my furniture, and I have, you know, flood lamps from my dad's warehouse, and it was a disaster. But I'm like, well, if it's all set up, I better get every picture I need. You know, so that's the same thing with videos. Like if I have like a makeshift studio set up, I want to make sure that I get as many things filmed as possible. But yeah, I think I got to start being a little more creative. Like instead of like melting into my couch after, you know, 7:30, maybe go be creative, you know, in a different way. Like maybe don't go write again, because writing too much can be a little overwhelming too.
Exactly.
But like use my creative juices in something that's like more physical, or just a different way. But yeah, no, that's all good stuff. I'll have to see what materializes, what comes to fruition. This is good though. I'm inspired. Thank you.
No problem. No problem. And on that note, I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah.
I hope you stay creative, and I look forward to seeing your book readings.
Yay. Thank you for having me. This is awesome.
No problem. I'll talk to you soon.
All
Adios.
Right, we'll talk to you. Bye.
All right, everyone. And that is the wrap up for Coffee and Critique with Nicoline.